Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Dill, Ohio State, Texas semifinals of the college football playoffs. It doesn't get much better than this matchup, and I think what excites me the most about this matchup is I've looked at Ohio State at points, more specifically what we just saw in the Rose Bowl, and said, hey, that's the best team in the country. Well, on the flip side, like you've looked at Texas at points in the 2024 season, there's been rankings that we've come out with that have had Texas the number one team in the country. Both of these teams have shown the ability to play some really, really high level football. What team plays their best football in this matchup? Probably going to be the storyline. And there's some dynamite matchups. Still, there's not a lot of defenses that can run with Ohio State. And you saw that with Oregon. Oregon, a very, very talented team. Those linebackers, those safeties, they could not keep up with what Ohio State was trying to do, especially getting to the perimeter in space. Well, guess what, Texas? Guys like Anthony Hill, guys like Andrew McCuba, some of the better linebackers and safeties that you see in the country, they got the guys. And look, they ain't no taking away Jeremiah Smith. I think we all know that. But can you limit him in this football game? Texas does have some personnel that really intrigues me. Fired up to get into some of these matchups. Before we do, and as always, I think most importantly, many of y'all have been rocking with the boys the last couple of months. We only got, 3 more game previews of the 2024 season. Can't thank you guys enough for all the support. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Many of y'all already know this, but let it fly in the comment section. I can see it getting rowdy down there, and I wouldn't want it any other way. Dill, without further ado, to me, you want to start with the main event. That's this Ohio State offense that pretty much looked unstoppable against Oregon in the Rose Bowl, going up against a Texas defense, and we've been saying it all year. Everybody wants to talk about Coach Sark, Quinn Ewers, and Arch Manning. This Texas defense, I don't know how many defensive units I'm taking over Texas in the country. And I do think they have the personnel to kind of match up with Ohio State. When you look at this matchup, what are you looking at first?
I think you said it. Like the fact that Ohio State was able to exploit two teams that I don't think were good enough, frankly, at the linebacker and safety room as a combination in Tennessee and Oregon, like two teams that kind of lead from their defensive line, have good boundary corners, but don't necessarily have elite linebacking play and elite safety play. I look at Texas, that's almost the opposite. Like I look at what Makuba's brought to this team. I look at the way a guy like Jelani McDonald plays and how athletic he is and how much ground he can cover and his ability to make open field tackles. That's kind of been the offense that Ohio State's been using to kind of I don't want to say hide their offensive line, but make it so that their offensive line doesn't get dominated, probably the way that Michigan was able to take that game over. And I wonder if Texas's ability to cover more ground from the linebacker and safety spot and tackle in space kind of allows.
So you didn't talk about, to me, the number one player in this football game. That's Anthony Hill. I think what the fundamental issue was with both Tennessee and Oregon is, hey, and you're right. What did Ohio State do horribly wrong against Michigan? We're going to try to play you in a locker, and that's you're running right at where Michigan's best with guys like Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant. And you're not playing to your playmakers on the outside and all the speed that you have. Yeah, Jeremiah Smith's really big. He's also really, really fast. And when you get him out in space, there's not a lot of linebackers and safeties that can come from the middle of the field and go to the boundary and make a play. Anthony Hill's that guy. There's not many more rangy linebackers that can cover more space quickly than Anthony Hill. And you look at Ohio State in the run game, too. That's the story, Dill. Ohio State had a ton of success. They ran the football for over 100 yards on runs that went outside of the tackle against Oregon. Didn't have that much success on the inside between the tackles, and you're probably right. Like if there's one, I wouldn't say it's a glaring flaw, but where they might not be elite at is probably on the inside of that offensive line with some of the injuries they've dealt with. I would guess you're going to see more of the same. Ohio State going to play to their perimeter playmakers, try to get this football out in space. Can Texas run and chase and go make plays on the boundary? That's where it starts. And I do think Texas has that ability to maybe do that.
Well, and that's where you get to Ohio State and if they have that counter punch, if you will, to maybe get after where I don't know that I think that Texas is as good as a team like Michigan on the inside. And they've played better. Like a guy like Colonel Broughton's played really good football. I think he's been huge for them. Collins is obviously a monster, but I look at the way Arizona State was able to punch him in the mouth a little bit up front with Scadaboo and that ability to kind of wear on them in the middle. And again, Texas, very good at creating negative plays. So it's hard to run that sort of style on them. But I do wonder. You do have two really good backs who I think run really hard.
So
Like
I do agree. To me, the Arizona State, you using the term Arizona State punching Texas in the mouth. Yeah, maybe to an extent.
Not totally fair.
Yeah, definitely not totally fair. I thought it had a lot more to do with Texas offense couldn't stay on the football field. And so Arizona State just they had a lot of chances to start punching in the face. And maybe one or two connected. When you have a running back like Cam Scadaboo, some will connect. The other storyline I have here is, can you get Ohio State into some of those? One, can you limit the big play? That's where it starts. So what Oregon just didn't do is you can't give up that many 20-plus yard plays, that many 50-plus yard plays.
Now, Texas has been great at that. Again, one matchup I kind of look at is Jahdae Barron because he's been awesome at the boundary spot. I do wonder. I mean, he's physically probably more of a nickel, like not the biggest corner in the world, plays the ball in the air really well, obviously tackles well. But if you can get a matchup with Jeremiah Smith in that situation, if you can get him on a guy like Michael Taffley, again, not the biggest secondary players in the world, I wonder if Ohio State can maybe get one of those. We haven't seen a lot of teams be able to get downfield on Texas. They've been really good at avoiding big plays. But again, I'm not sure they've seen a Jeremiah Smith. And I think him one-on-one, if he can get that look against one of the smaller secondary players, I do wonder if that's a matchup.
Look, Jeremiah Smith's going to get his, but if I'm Ohio State, I'm picking someone else to throw at than Jahdae Barron. Because what he's been doing, I don't care playing nickel, boundary cornerback, he's been a stud for Texas. This is where it comes down to me. Can you get Ohio State into some of those more third and longs? And they weren't very good in those third and longs against Oregon. Now, it didn't really matter because they were hitting those explosive plays. You're right. Texas, number one in the country in terms of yards per pass. They have not given up a lot of explosive plays. If you can do that, can Ohio State block you up? Because I look at Donovan Jackson, who has been very impressive, like an All-American guard that's playing left tackle because of the injuries Ohio State has endured. He's a guard, man. At the end of the day, he's still a guard. And you look at Colin Simmons, that is one of the best first steps that I see in college football. I'm really intrigued with that matchup and how many negative plays. And can you get to Will Howard? Can you affect Will Howard a little bit? Because Oregon wasn't able to. You've seen Will Howard struggle with pressure in his face at times. That's the other storyline I'm looking at. It's going to be
pass rush. I do think will be a problem if they can get into situations where they can really come after him. And if Texas can take away some of that stuff that is quicker to the boundary, that again does hide that offense's need to really hold up for a decent time in pass protection. I'm looking at the way Trey Moore is playing, the way Colin Simmons is playing, the way Barron Sorrell is playing. I don't really see Ohio State blocking those guys consistently if they got to check them.
Yeah. But at the end of the day, and like I know a lot of it's like, all right, keys for Texas, and like that's all good to say. Right? So it's one other thing to go out and like try to take away a guy like Jeremiah Smith or go tackle him in space or run with him vertically down the field. Going to be too heavy. It's a heavyweight matchup on that side of the football, and quite frankly, again, a heavyweight matchup on the other side too. Because that Ohio State defense, we've been saying it all year. Like if that Ohio State defensive line in the big games can play the way they're capable of playing, it's going to be a problem.
My sirens are flashing because the way Ohio State's stopping the run, in the way Texas has struggled to move the ball when they don't run the ball well, and the way they struggled against Arizona State and obviously struggled in both games against Georgia. That's where my like flashing light is like
where it starts.
What is Texas' answer going to be? Because I don't see them running the ball super effectively. I just don't see any. The way that defensive line plays, the way Cody Simon was playing, that's really
Caleb Downs was coming up from the safety spot and getting involved in it. Caleb Downs is, and there's a very good argument. He's the best defense player in the country right now. How he's impacting the game in so many different ways from Ohio State. It's rare stuff. So that's where it starts, because you look at Texas, that rushing attack, when it's humming, it's very, very difficult to stop. And this is an Ohio State front seven that's just straight up NFL dudes everywhere. If they struggle to run the football, can Quinn Ewers win this game from the pocket? And there's two questions that you have. One, Ohio State was brilliant taking away to the middle of the field against Oregon. I mean, they just sink Caleb Downs kind of playing that middle of the field. And with his instincts and range, they couldn't really get much going there, kind of forcing stuff to the boundary, which is not Dylan Gabriel's forte. If you can get if you
Well,
can
that's
get
the issue because Texas, I do think, has a much better ability to attack down the field than Oregon did without an Evan Stewart, and that I think did make a big difference.
well, that's
Oregon didn't really have their guy to push it vertical. I look at Texas. Golden can do it. I look at a guy like Ryan Wingo. He certainly can get down the field and make big plays. And again, that's where you've been able to pick on Ohio State a little bit. Big physical wide receivers working down the field, like Nebraska was able to do, like Evan Stewart was able to do in that first matchup against Ohio State. I look, Texas, at least they do have a bunch of guys who I think are very good working.
And Coach Sark's as good as any, scheming it up vertically, like dialing up some shot plays that can change games. Can Texas block Ohio State in some of those third? Like, hey, if you want to push the ball down the field, you got to keep the quarterback clean. Texas is dealing with some injuries on the offensive line. The way guys like Jack Sawyer, JTT, Tyleek Williams are rushing the passer, that's another storyline. Dill, last thing I'll say, do you see Arch in this football game more to try to get that run game going?
I don't think so. I look at the way I think people are really beating up Quinn Ewers for no reason. I look at the way they weren't able to run the ball against Arizona State. Again, the one interception later in that game, that's really, really gross.
But the expectation should be that you're a quarterback that can overcome a run game that's not working. And so far,
they did win the game. He did make the plays late that he had to make. It was a little bit ugly for sure.
Yes,
but they did win the game. I don't want to totally downplay like Arizona State. I don't think they're the best team in the world for sure, but they're a very good team. Texas did win that game, and frankly, up until the end of it with some real bad snafus, were mostly dominant in it. And I look I feel like people are really beating up Quinn Ewers pretty badly if he doesn't play perfect, because when you do have a guy like Arch Manning sitting behind him.
Well, I didn't mean it. I did not mean it like Arch starting this football game, but it was more to facilitate a run game because you've seen them go to that, especially in the red zone. And I do feel like if you want to beat Ohio State, you're going to have to run the football somewhat, because you do not want to be sitting in the second, third, and longs where Jack Sawyer and JTT are pinning the ears back. Because we know if there's one thing Quinn struggles with, it's getting himself out of trouble and extending plays. You saw DG, Dylan Gabriel, be able to do that a little bit. It's not Quinn's game. And so I look, Texas good offensive line. It's good on good, but they are struggling with some injuries. And the way Jack Sawyer and JTT are playing right now, you do feel like there's going to be some pressure on the quarterback if you're consistently in these obvious passing situations. So my question wasn't, is Arch going to start in this football game? It's more, can we use Arch and his athleticism to maybe give us a little bit more juice in the run game? We'll see how it works out. It's going to be a great game. There's a lot of NFL dudes on this football field. I'll give it to you first. Ohio State, Texas. Ohio State coming in 6-point favorites now. 6-point favorites. Who you got?
I got to pick Texas. Not hand up. I have some real Michigan bias here. I am not rooting for Ohio State, and their play is scaring me quite a bit. But I also do think there's an element of some recency bias where, yes, Ohio State's played 2 really good games.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I would say Texas hasn't played their best in the last couple times we've gotten to see Texas out there.
Yeah.
Well, I shouldn't say that. They played really good against Clemson. I don't want to Clemson played good in that game. I thought Texas played really good.
Yeah.
But I do think there's some recency bias with that Arizona State performance. I look, if you told me this 2 weeks ago, I would have said this game's a pick 'em. Given that the spread's kind of exploded, if you will, out to Ohio State, I'll take Texas to cover it.
I'm going to be the dummy that walks right into the recency bias. From what I just saw from Ohio State, if they play anywhere close to that.
That is true.
And look, I think Texas' best ball could bang with the Wasps, but that version of Ohio State, for me, it is hard for me to sit here and not take Ohio State. And I said when we were watching the game live that if Ohio State comes in anything inside of a touchdown, I'm going to take them. They're inside of a touchdown here, 6 points.
I mean, really, to me, Texas needs to be able to jump on them a little bit up front and be able to create negative plays. How athletic they are and how good they are at doing it, that is something I think people may be sleeping on a little bit what Texas can do to this Ohio State team.
Yeah, and that the first quarter of this football game is massive because both of these coaching staffs, Ryan Day and Coach Kelly, Coach Sark, it doesn't get much better in terms of scripting the first couple of drives. What team comes out and executes and makes it happen on those first 2 drives, that could be the storyline of this football.
Ohio State's come out storming out of the gates with their scripted
times. Texas did too, though. And then it's just I think Coach Sark ran out of the script or something. I don't know. But that was first couple of days, they were scripting it up. we'll see how it goes. It's going to be a phenomenal football game. I got Ohio State. You got Texas. Let it fly in the comment section. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. We'll talk to y'all later.